afternoon, and welcome to another edition of PharSide Pholios. I am your host, Monica Leek, and we are excited to continue our celebration of wonderful winter writers in the month of January with amazing series of author interviews. And today we have as our special guest Paula M. Kalamaras and Paul Kraly. Paula and Paul have written together for over 25 years, usually for other people and not themselves. They've contributed over 400 magazine articles, short stories, blogs, teleplays, scripts, and along with 7 nonfiction books. So, Shadows and Light, that we'll be discussing today, is their first joint effort in fiction. So, welcome to the far side, Paula and Paul.
Hi. Welcome. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us on today to talk about your book, Shadows in Light. I'll tell you right off that I enjoyed reading it. So I'm just going to dive right into this first question.
Go for it.
The book opens with the following: running from something, cast in dark shadows, relentless and hunting, the sound like shuffling leaves, unremitting, echoed all around her. What about, this opening line kind of hooks the reader into the story?
Well, yeah, I mean, it gives you a feeling that something weird's going to be happening. You don't know quite what it is, but it gives you a sense of danger. And that danger is going to manifest itself somehow with the shuffling leaves, and she's obviously very frightened. And we wanted to start with a bang.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Basically. We figured, we could have just started with, they found her body, but instead we really wanted to give a sense of fear and a sense of immediacy to what was coming up. So we did.
Well, thank you. I mean, it really was a good hook from the onset.
Thank you.
The prologue itself introduces the reader to Miraquois willow trees. You have some unique character names in the story as well. Someone no one particular cares for, and then you've got Captain Lord Aiden Uris, who's a detective and Lord Justice. How does this tragedy following the Justice Ball impact the characters, and how are the characters evolving following what happens at the beginning?
Nobody cares for Miraquois. Nobody likes her. She's a defense lawyer who only defends the scum of the earth. But like anyone else, she doesn't deserve to be slaughtered. And as we progress through this, nobody wants her dead. But especially after having been at this fancy dress ball, and Lord Justice and Aiden Uris have both been at this ball, they saw her just like a couple hours before. It impacts them significantly, and it has the characteristics of some other murders that have been going on in their realm, and their realm is called Muthiathalon, and it's, as I keep referring to it, over the hedges. It's away from Earth. It's away from here. So it's a different kind of environment. But it also brings to light that they've been having these problems. They've gotten some clues about who's been doing it, and they know they need help. And that's how they evolve, because they go from, I'm not bringing anybody in to help me, to, yeah, I think we need to recruit somebody. We need to bring somebody in who can share some of these shadows that are occurring all over the place. So that's where we kind of came in with. And Lord Justice is in his other identity. He is Aiden's older brother. So they've got a very strong bond between them, but where the one is impulsive, who Aiden is impulsive, you have Lord Justice, who's deliberate and icy and remote. So for him to evolve to letting somebody come in and help them is a big step for him.
So what do you think? What's the commonality between what happened with Miraqua, Willitress, and the other cases is dust? So is this like particular situation a quest, like one of like a who done it type quest, or will readers find themselves in something that may be more unpredictable in terms of like a trail of mystery, magic, etc.?
It's a bit of both.
Yeah,
it's both.
Both.
You're going to be bringing in somebody from a completely different environment to help and to be introduced to magic. So you're going to have this whole magical component going on. But Nisi Athlon isn't some, like little fairy tale backwater. It's a modern, vibrant, very magical and technological society at the same time, where the two are integrated into one form of investigation or any aspect of life over there. But you're going to be, and the thing is with dust, it's a highly addictive substance that is basically the skin sloughed off of fairies. It's fairy dust. Peter Pan throws the fairy dust. Well, there's the other side of it. If you're not a fairy and you're not a demigod, you can get addicted to it like an opioid.
Okay.
So it's nasty stuff. And there's, a concerted effort by Aiden and Lord Justice and Captain Demos, who comes in later, Cadogan. All of them are really trying to cut down on the dust trade. And Willow Trees kept getting gang dusters and others off. That was her job. She kept taking them and defending them and getting them off on technicalities so that they never appeared in appeal before Lord Justice. So it all interconnects with each other. And part of what the mystery is, who's doing the dusting? Why are they doing the dusting? And why are people connected to dust dying? So you've got both.
Okay. So you also introduced this term, paragon. So how will the paragon play a role throughout the series, or will the paragon just be something that's highlighted in this book one, or making a single appearance in book one and you don't hear about it again, or is it something that's going to follow the series?
The paragon is primarily the magic core of the series, and it's integral, and everybody who gets connected into it is like Maya and Kai and the others are all going to be part of it, and they're all going to be part of this ongoing series, because just because you solve one crime doesn't mean the rest are gone. And there are other issues that will be occurring, from trafficking to dust, always dust. And then you have outside forces that are against what's going on in Nisi Athlon and what's going on the island and the polis itself. So that's where you have to. So it'll be there. It'll show up in different ways.
One of your characters references early on about this idea about having kind of two identities. What are the identities that Lord Justice has to separate, and how do they impact his perception, as he conducts this investigation within the story?
Actually,
there's three. Actually,
three identities.
Yeah,
wow. Okay.
He's Lord Justice.
Okay.
He was appointed to this because their previous Lord Justice had basically sold a whole bunch of people down the river, and there was a massacre, and the Queen and King got very upset about this. And when the queen gets mad, don't cross her. And so she said to Kai Eurus, Aiden's brother, look, I know you're already my chief investigator. You've already cleaned up corruption. You've already done this. You've already done that. You're going to be the new Lord Justice. But I don't want anybody knowing your identity as Lord Justice. It's not to get out into the public, because if it gets out into the public, people are going to try to corrupt him. So he actually has to wear a circlet or a sash and some other things that obscure his identity, so nobody actually knows. I mean, there are a core group of people who know who he is, Lord Justice, but they're all spellbound to not reveal it. They can't reveal it. They can't tell anybody who he is. Even though, that once you get onto the floor where Lord Justice and Kai Eurus have their offices, he goes from one office to the other. When you get onto that floor, only the special forces people know, and they can't tell people that he's out there doing it. And his closest, and his family knows, and other people know. But it's a secret, and that's the biggest part of it. And then his third, and so as Kai Eurus, he's in charge of the special forces. He does the major crimes investigation. He does this stuff. As Lord Justice, he's the ultimate court of appeals before it goes to the king. And king for sentencing and stuff. So those are his two aspects. And this third part is he's the master of Clan Eurus, which means he's in charge of all of this far-flung, wide open family. So that's the three identities, as it were. And they all...
thanks for breaking those identities out, because I think I was just, when I started reading, trying to figure out, all right, we've got this one that I clearly see, and this one I can clearly see, and there's like a third, and I don't know. I think I separated it into like it was a different character versus it being a part of that identity. So that clears a lot up for me, as clears something up for me as a reader. So thanks for highlighting that for me. Without giving the whole story away, what can you tell our live and replay audience about the premise of Shadows and Light?
Shadows and Light is a crime story that's been mixed with high-grade fantasy, technology, and magic. You've got a serial killer running around loose on Nisiathlon, which is the hub of the Hidden Rims, as it were. And the Hidden Rims are where everybody's gone. The gods, the fairies, the kobolds, all of the different fairy tale magical people that don't exist on Earth, or the E, as we call it, are there. And they've built this society. And it's another dimension, and they're a group of demigod detectives. Basically, they're descendants of the old gods. And they're trying to bring this killer to justice, small j justice, not Lord Justice. And then they bring in this reclusive writer from the Earth, Maya Animus, who really wants to be a detective. She fancies herself as a detective. And we don't want to give too much away from the basic premise, but it's also a love story and a story about change, a story about discovering yourself, and a story about serial killer who's a really nasty dude. I had somebody read the book in its earliest form, and she sent me a note that the serial killer kept her up at night.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool.
Well, Shadows and Light falls kind of in that fantasy genre. So what drew you into writing in this particular genre versus other forms? Because you guys, both of you have like written so much between, the articles, the blogs, and things of that nature. And so diving in to this realm, of fiction, and then narrowing that, coming into fantasy, how's that How's that been?
Go ahead. You want to?
No,
All right.
I'm a huge science fiction fan, so I took to shadows, like easily. I mean,
it has a science fiction-ish component to it in that you have one of our characters, Frey, is he's called a flaglia, which is a Nordic fairy. He's got little wings and everything. Mm-hmm. He's also a master of technology, and he takes magic and he combines it into these amazing different pieces of equipment that can help people analyze evidence right on the spot, and the hollow wrist watches. So we do have an element of science fiction in there. I came to fantasy at a very early age. My mom decided that Sunday school was not my best bet, so she handed me C.S. Lewis's Narnia series as a way to explain faith and religion. And then from there, I moved right into Tolkien, who was his best friend. And I read Tolkien once a year, every year. I teach it. I belong to the Mythopoeic Society, which is based on Tolkien. I talked about the Oxford Center for Fantasy and doing stuff like that. I work with them too. So fantasy is far more interesting to me most times than reality.
Yeah. That's how I see it, as an escape.
And I always like crime thrillers and stuff like that, and crime TV shows and stuff. So I thought, put them together.
Mm-hmm. And it it sort of adds extra element. You have something that you think is an escape into fantasy, and now all of a sudden, like murder, all it's suddenly shown up there, and it's just changes the whole perspective.
Well, we also definitely. Also, when I was a kid, most kids got to hear fantasy or fairy tales, and they got to hear, little kid books and stuff. And my grandmother didn't buy into that. And since, I grew up I was raised by committee, my mother, my grandmother, and my uncle. And my grandmother's idea of storytelling was to repeat the Iliad to me. It's tough when you're 4.
Wow.
And, it colored my view of the gods and everything. And so when we founded Nisi Avalon, the first word Nisi means island. And Avalon is Avalon, where Arthur was supposed to go afterwards. But when we founded Nisi Avalon, it was founded by the Gemini, Castor and Polydeuces, and 2 gods from the Celtic world, Lady Dawn, and who's Danu, and she's one of the mother goddesses, and her husband Dispater, Belimara. He has a whole bunch of different names. And so those 4 founders set the rules for this world, and then we started building the world out from that. So
now, Shadows and Light is book 1 of the Hidden Rims Saga. So what can readers kind of expect to see for the characters that they've connected with in this book, which was released in 2021 of last year?
Yeah. Well, we're hard at work on the sequel, on book 2. Plans are it's a 7-book series. Book 2 is called Shadows in Mist. And a couple of we're going to delve further into the relationships between the characters that have developed. We're going to introduce a few more people and a few more situations, and we're going to tackle other aspects of like, where are all the children who are on the milk cartons have gone, really? And it's surprising where they are. And then we have a rebellion kind of from the former rulers kind of happening in the background. And one of our characters, Cyan, is going to have a major life change. And Maya's going to discover the identity of her father.
Okay. So readers, put a pin in it. So if you haven't picked up the first book, you definitely need to do that now so you're ready for the second.
Yeah.
And I'm having a great time because I do a lot of the plotting. He's brilliant on the dialogue. So I'm putting all the little pieces together and getting everything together, and he's looking at it going, oh God, I have to talk about this.
So, yeah, it's strange. I have a stammer, and yet I can give a character speaking voices and skills. Just
he is really good at it. He is very good at that. So we work together on that closely. We're actually revising another novel that we've done called Edgeworld, and that's a standalone. That's a standalone, and we're working on that. That's going to come out soon too. So I'm really working on that too.
So with the two of you having written nonfiction together, and then taking this leap over to the fiction side of the fence, what was the challenge in the writing process, or did anything really change in your writing together in comparison to what you've done before, whether individually or together?
No, I was doing fiction early on, and
so was
she.
We were writing like stories. Now, the only thing that's really sometimes switching between is like, I'm doing a cozy paranormal mystery, and it's very snarky, and then I'm writing, which is another thing I'm working on right now, and then working on the sequel, which is a little more procedurally oriented, and then our other job, which is writing grants and technical stuff and doing all these things in the other books, is very formal. And sometimes the formality sneaks in a little too much. And then certain people say...
No, I saw an edit once where she had put in a sentence from a fiction story that she had done, and it was in the middle of a grant proposal for a school, and so I hey, Paula, you want
to take that out? Yeah,
yes, sometimes
they get mixed up sometimes.
Yeah.
Where sometimes I get really formal, and all of a sudden the language is like sounds like my master's thesis, and I don't really want that to be in a story that I'm writing. So.
Right.
So we have to keep.
You have to be.
I have to separate them. Yeah. I'm like Kai. I have to keep everything separate.
So, as authors, what has been a challenge in writing and publishing for something as specific as fantasy and the other, areas of your writing?
Well,
I would say our biggest challenge is editing. I mean, it's just
yeah, it's tough because we also have a small publishing company, and so some of our services are editing. We do editing services, but when you're trying to edit your own stuff, it's tough.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So you have to basically remove yourself from that process, and you have to have people read it and say, what are you talking about?
Right.
So
Yeah.
we do a lot of editing, and we'll edit each other's things that we write separately because that just works.
But then, of course, if we edit each other's things, we have some issues at times. Like she'll ask me why I would change this or that, and I might
He'll argue.
I'll argue since it's something that I feel sounds better, and then she'll say, it is hard to get either of us to pull from our own words, obviously.
But as my mother once said, it's not deathless prose.
Yeah.
Cut it.
We tell authors that all the time. I mean,
we edited one project. The book was 1,275 pages. Solid fantasy.
Wow.
World building was way off. And the last we saw, he finally cut it down into 2 books.
Right.
And the 2 books together are like altogether 700 pages. So about 350 for each one, which is a far more readable thing. And, he listened to what we said and how we edited it and what we did about it. So it worked. So.
Wow. That to go from the 1,200 to like two separate books and still maintain the integrity of the work and provide guidance to the author. That's an amazing feat within itself. How do you keep, with writing fantasy, how do you keep it from being sounding cookie cutter, or predictable?
That is difficult. And that's one of the ways I do is I've been reading for, centuries. And when I see something and I do have a tendency to read a book and I want to have a red pen in my hand so I can start chopping it. But what we did, especially with shadows, is what we did was we figured that combining genres and making it less of one. And so basically we have a dark urban fantasy with a criminal thriller with underlying romance and a more a diverse set of characters. I mean, they come from different cultures, different backgrounds, different mythologies, and I teach mythology. So what we tried to do was create this society that brings all of these people together in this fairly harmonious place, except for, that serial killer who's running around killing people. And, most of their crimes, most of their other things haven't been on this massive level. We have this, there are a couple of amusing crimes that go through where one of our people wanted to turn somebody into a mule while the other one wanted to castrate the father-in-law. And then, so, Kai or Lord Justice gives them an interesting sentence. We tried to make it less high fantasy, which has a tendency to be very rigidly, you go on a quest, you're on the hero's journey, you go, you have the mentor, you do this, you do that. And,
right.
It's nice and it's a comforting way to read things, but we don't want to be the same. So my advice to people who are doing fantasy, find what you like and switch it up.
Mm-hmm.
Tolkien has already been Tolkien.
Mm-hmm.
He's already done it. He's already finished and gone to his reward and everything. Don't be Tolkien. Be you. So we're us.
That's a good golden nugget for those who aspire, to write in this genre or even other genres. Just to be you. You can acknowledge that things have been done before, but really stay true to your voice.
Exactly.
What is something that you will, hope that readers will take away from Shadows and Light, and come back to book 2 all the way through the end of the series?
Oh my! I mean, all of the characters. I mean, they are just so different, and they're so likable early on, and you see them changing and
growing,
right,
when you meet Maya, she's shy and reserved, and she's, she lives in her head, and she has a cousin who lives with her. That's not us, but he has his own storyline coming down the pike. But she lives. Yeah, you haven't seen that one yet.
I did not know that.
But she lives in her head, and she, when she's upset, she puts herself into a fantasy world, and then all of a sudden she's thrust into a fantasy world, and it's her adjustment. And then as you get into the second book, all the thrill has come off, and she's suddenly there for the long haul, and she has to adjust to how different it is, and how can she survive there. And I really, and we go from one character who really doesn't like her to being, like a fanboy. So that's how it starts, and as they go on, they're going to each get into different relationships and different situations. That's going to make them all grow. And we really hope that people stick around to watch this growth, because I mean, if we've been plotting we have a whole thing plotted out, as we've been plotting it and changing it because characters do have a tendency to take on lives of their own, and the person you think you're killing in book 1 is going to be your hero in book 3. So they do have a tendency to become their own people, and I really hope that people take that away, that these are very interesting people no matter what world they live in. So.
Well, how can our viewers and those who will come and watch this on replay purchase the book and connect with you on your social media?
Well, you can find we're on Amazon. We're in Barnes and Noble. We're in some bookstores. You can order. You can order us through Ingram distributors. You can even come onto our website, and we can send you over. And you can find us on social media. Our social media name is Writers with Cats.
On Twitter.
On Twitter. I'm sorry. On Twitter, we're Writers with Cats. We have a site called the Hidden Rims Saga on Facebook, but you can also find us through Paul Kraly or Paula Kalamaras, not our pseudonyms, PM Amaris and Paul Gergier, but we went under pseudonyms because we do so much writing under Kalamaras and Kraly, as far as 3 economic forecasts, a book on photography, and some other things that really don't have anything to do with our creative side.
Fiction.
And fiction. and frankly, Amaris just dropped off the first 3 letters of my last name, because A comes out higher on a bookshelf in a bookstore than K. So A and D are much higher than K, which always, if you look at a bookstore and you go into the K, it's like down on the bottom 2 shelves. Always. No matter what.
And,
no matter what bookstore.
and our site is
Our site is scribesunlimited.com, and that's also the site where we promote other writers. We do publicists. You can hire us as publicists for your book promotions, and books that we've published are there too. So we're new publishers, so we only have 4 books that we've published, but we've got other people lined up, and we're opening up an area for comic books and adult type comic books, and
we edit also.
We edit, and so you can find all of what we do on our site.
If any author is out there who
needs a good editor, we're pretty good at it.
Something, yeah,
like I said, 1,200 down to 750, and didn't lose any of the important structure. Just extraneous words that woulda, coulda, shoulda not been there.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with our audience and those who will watch us by replay. We're so grateful that Paula and Paul, that you've joined us today to share with us shadows and light. So everybody who's watching and who will watch the replay, go pick up the book, whether at your independent bookseller, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all of the places where you buy books, Amazon if you're going online, or all your online retailers. And if you really love fantasy, you're going to really dive into this particular story. You're going to connect to the characters as they process life and decision makings and relationships and family and community. And it has all the things. This book has all the things. So you do want to pick that up. So thank you again, Paula and Paul, for joining us on today. Follow them on their social media, Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and on their website, and to see all of the things that they're doing. They're a great resource, especially since they are also editors and publishers. So you definitely want to check out their services and what they are doing. So we're thankful that they joined us on this afternoon, and we're going to tell you, our viewers, make sure you're staying tuned to the PharSide Co-Ed Book Club Facebook page for more author interviews and posts as we celebrate wonderful winter writers in the month of January. And so until next time, many roots, many voices are a part of the infinite story. So plant your seed. Have a great and wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.